Imagine a game where you spawn in on a random planet in a random solar system. And within this solar system, there can be upwards of 6 planets that you can travel to. But if you leave that solar system, there are upwards of 600 other solar systems that you can travel to, all within an area known as a region. But then what if I told you there are literally billions of regions within a galaxy? And then what if I told you that that game has 256 defined galaxies and many more beyond that? You would say that's impossible, right? Well, No Man's Sky. I've always wanted to try this game, but somehow never got the chance. Until now, due to Hello Games generously sponsoring today's video. So what is No Man's Sky? Well, it's a survival space exploration game where you travel from planet to planet, finding new life forms and participating in quests. It serves as a sort of sandbox game with many RPG elements, and wow, does that sound like such a hollow and lifeless way to describe what is essentially now an absolute masterpiece. I'm sure most of you have heard the history of No Man's Sky. It was released in 2016, and at launch, it faced a ton of backlash, mostly due to the game being way overhyped with a lot of ambitious but ultimately empty promises. The game felt repetitive, plenty of locations and NPCs lacked variety, and there was little to no mechanical depth. And on top of that, there was a ton of technical issues and bugs that led most people to disappointment. You might think that that would be the end of the story, and for most games it is. But like an old Nokia cell phone or the remaining 0.01% of germs or the middle school S, No Man's Sky refuses to die. This is because Hello Games committed to years of free updates, adding multiplayer, base building, story missions, much better visuals, and deeper gameplay mechanics. And the community now praises the developers' dedication, transforming the game into a rich, immersive experience that honestly excels well beyond their original promises. No Man's Sky is an infinitely procedurally generated game, meaning you can essentially access the entire depths of the universe. A single game with a hefty amount of playtime could have you traveling across thousands of different planets, across thousands of systems, across a multitude of galaxies. They say there are over 18 quintillion seeds, or essentially 18 quintillion planets across the entirety of No Man's Sky. Considering there are only about 7 quintillion grains of sand on Earth, this means just a percentage of a percentage of a percentage of the potential planets within the game have actually been discovered, or even ever will be discovered. We'll get into all of that and more. But the real question is, should you pick up No Man's Sky as a new or returning player in 2025? Well, let's get into it. So upon spawning into No Man's Sky for the very first time, you'll be placed on a randomly generated planet. Mine seemed to be a colder and icier sort of environment. You have a quest journal with the primary mission, Awakenings, that tells you to test and repair your multi-tool. The multi-tool is everything. It can shoot things, mine things, collect things. You can even transform and shape the environment around you by using it. I opened up my inventory with Tab, and as you can see, there's a section for your multi-tool, your Starship, as well as your exosuit. These can all be customized and upgraded to a massive degree, to the point that they're almost unrecognizable from their original state. I was told to find ferrite dust, which is like the most common resource throughout No Man's Sky. You generally collect ferrite by mining rocks you'll find throughout the environment. As with any survival type of game, the environment is your key to everything else. Basically, everything in No Man's Sky can be interacted with, collected, refined, and crafted. Now, you might notice this extremely limiting field of view and first-person perspective that the game seemed to set by default. It wasn't too long until I changed this. Personally, I much prefer the third-person point of view. Anyway, after fixing my scanner and multi-tool, a marker was placed on my compass, which led me to a crash site with a starship. My Starship. I hopped inside, and apparently most of its systems are broken, and the first bit of the main story quest leads you through not only repairing all of your ship's broken parts, but also charging them so they're usable. You see, everything from your exosuit to multi-tool to Starship are made up of parts. Generally, these parts can be charged with resources that you find and create by traveling around planets. At first, it sort of feels like you're constantly going to be needing to upkeep these systems in order to keep playing, but it's honestly quite manageable. And as you upgrade each of these systems and add new parts to them, they become more and more efficient. As with most survival games, you're met with a general sense of confusion to start the game, as you have to learn about each of the materials and processes in order to really get things started. However, with No Man's Sky, using this entire beginning quest as a sort of tutorial, I found myself grasping the concepts quite easily. I began making my way towards my next quest marker in order to find materials to make a hermetic seal for my Starship's pulse engine. The interface in No Man's Sky is super simple. Down here in the bottom left corner, you have a couple of meters. The top one indicates your exosuit's resistance to the current environment, and the bottom meter is your life support system. This isn't your actual health, however, when your life support reaches 0, you begin to lose health. health. You can recharge your life support system with oxygen, which is a fairly easily found resource on most planets. And then in the bottom right, you'll see your quest tracker indicating your next step, as well as some indicators for stamina and your jetpack. Both of these can only be used for a short time, but they refill passively. And in the top right is your multi-tool. Right now it only has one function, the mining tool, but later on you can switch between functions by pressing G. And on top of all of that, the game looks utterly amazing. It's probably the most screenshotable game I've ever played. The amount of times I caught myself just looking in awe at some amazing landscape in some weird planet I found, with other massive planets in the sky and in the distance, it's honestly just beautiful. Now, at this point, a warning flashed across my screen telling me that a storm was coming and I needed to take cover. The vast majority of planets in No Man's Sky will have random storms, and these can vary in just how dangerous they actually are. And if you take cover within a base or a cave or even your starship, you'll be unaffected. However, if you're caught out in the open, your life support system and eventually your health can start draining much faster. Luckily for me, I literally immediately found a cave the second the storm started, so that was convenient. Storms generally last for about 3 to 5-ish minutes, and then the game will tell you the storm is abating and it's safe to head back outside. Anyway, after really getting my bearings, learning how to scan for resources and mine and what each resource does and how to recharge all of my equipment and learning how to craft for my inventory, I was then taught how to make a portable refiner, which you can place anywhere. You can add some carbon as fuel and then refine any of your materials, which is a pretty quick process. You can then pick up your refiner and carry on your way. I generally kept one of these in my inventory at all times. But finally, after all of this, my ship was seemingly repaired, and I was so ready to try it out. And after pressing W to take off, this is where No Man's Sky really begins to shine. I flew up into space and entered into my first system. Take note of the lack of loading screens. It's important because switching between planets in space in most sci-fi sorts of games is a rather jarring experience. In No Man's Sky, however, it's fluid. It literally feels like at any time you can just hop in your ship, point up, and leave to another planet, which you literally can. It's truly one of the most immersive space exploration experiences, mainly just due to the simple lack of loading screens. Anyway, once you're out of the atmosphere and into space, your ship has a few different functions. First of all, it can shoot lasers and rockets, which you can upgrade or add more weapons to, and you can also hold shift to fly faster. However, once you've walked into a place where you would like to go, you might notice that it would take literally hours to actually get there. Luckily, that pulse engine, which you repaired, allows you to enter hyperspeed, and once you've locked on to where you want to actually go, this gets you there much quicker. So I made my way towards my quest marker on this planet that looks suspiciously like Saturn. I was interested to see what other planets might look like, but also to test if the experience while entering the planet is as seamless as leaving a planet. And it turns out it is. I am many more hours into my playthrough at this point, and I'm still mind blown at just how seamless the transition from space travel to planet is. This next planet was much more tropical and warm than where I was prior, with palm trees and grassy hills, and I was first asked to name the planet. Apparently you can name any of the planets you discover, given that no one else has discovered them already. Considering that this one almost looked identical to Saturn, I named it very creatively Saturn. It was here where I learned to create a base computer and really get working on base construction. You can place a base computer on any planet, and you can even place multiple of these on a single planet. Especially as later on you'll learn to add teleporters and other functionalities to these bases, it can be really important for getting back to certain locations easily. On top of that, you can access your build menu with Z, and you're shown a variety of typical survival building game structures, like flooring and walls and roofs and doors. I've never been good with these, but it's nice to get some shelter down for a base in case a storm hits. And in fact, a storm was coming right now, and I wasn't able to finish my base, so I just hid underneath the flooring. Hey, if it works, it works. Afterwards, I was told to make a construction research unit, and here you can use something known as salvage data to learn new recipes and things to build, both for your base's functionality, but also its general appearance. Later on, you'll get access to a ton more customization in regards to things you can learn by accessing something known as the anomaly. But we'll get into that a bit later. Now, I needed to find more salvage data, and by using your visor, you're able to scan certain types of resources out in the world, on any given planet. You can find hidden treasures, different types of plants, different types of metals, etc. This tool can also be used to scan and discover different animal and plant life, which will add it to the database, as well as grant you units when you discover something new. Units are the currency used within No Man's Sky to buy and sell items. After finding some more salvage data, I was finally able to learn the recipe for the teleporter, which I placed, but unfortunately it said it had insufficient power. So I tracked down some more buried technology and dug down to it using my manipulator module on my multi-tool, and I got some more salvage data. I then returned to my base, and using my construction research unit, I discovered the biofuel reactor. And this is what you need to supply power to the rest of your base. You do this through the use of carbon. I then discovered electrical wiring, which you have to use to connect your reactor to all of the different units which require power within your base. Now, unfortunately, I didn't have any other teleporters placed on any other planet, so as of right now, I had nowhere I could actually teleport to. However, I was happy to leave this one here, meaning that I could return to my humble beginning base at any time. So I think you could mark this moment as the sort of end of the tutorial. I mean, I've barely scratched the surface in terms of what is possible within No Man's Sky, but at this point you have a good grasp of the basics, especially in terms of traveling between planets, maintaining your ship, your gear, and creating and maintaining your base. At this point, the game really starts to open up, and I was told to make my way to the space station, which was off-planet. So I don't know why, but up until this point, I thought that No Man's Sky had no other NPCs. I thought it was just you traveling between planets. But that's not the case at all. In fact, NPCs are all over the place, and they're super important. You see, most systems you visit will have its own space station marked by this glowing symbol. And inside, you're going to find all sorts of different NPCs. Some of them will run stores, which have stocks of items you might want to buy or trade. There will also be NPCs milling about, which can help you learn different words from different languages. There are currently almost 4,000 unique words within No Man's Sky that you can learn. Moreover, you'll find a teleport at every space station that you can use to travel to any of your currently placed teleporters out in the universe. And on top of all of that, I found an appearance modifier where you can change everything from your race to the gear you're wearing to the color of the gear and more. I thought this looked a little better than my all-red outfit that my character started out with by default. And finally, what really blew my mind was the fact that other NPCs will just show up and stand near their starships. By talking with them, you can negotiate a trade and a price to purchase their starship from them. Unfortunately, this guy wanted my starship as well as 17 million units. Seeing as I currently only had 15,000, I don't think this trade was going to work. At this point, I just continued following my quests, going from planet to planet. At one point, I was directed to upgrade my ship's hyperdrive, and this would allow me to travel to other star systems. Now, in order to upgrade my hyperdrive, I needed 5 microprocessors, and those needed to be purchased at a space station. So I gathered some raw materials and made my way back to the space station to sell them and make over 100,000 units that were required to purchase the microprocessors. And with my hyperdrive installed and ready to go, I was finally able to access the galaxy map for the first time. Here you can see all the surrounding star systems, and the game wasn't directing me to one in particular, I just needed to travel in general. So I chose the Cecilov system, which was close by, and entered this sort of warp speed portal, which landed me squarely in this new system, right in front of the space station. The sheer size of this game is actually unbelievable, and even now after many more hours of playtime, it's still hard to comprehend. It can often lead to a bit of a lonely and desolate feeling while playing, especially as you get farther and farther from some of your bases. Luckily, it's always pretty easy to teleport back to them. And now is when the game really began to open up for me. It's amazing how different each planet can be from one another. The plant life, the general environment, the weather, the animals or creatures you come across. Considering some of the past complaints I've heard about No Man's Sky, about it seeming repetitive or every planet seeming the same, that is absolutely not the case these days. I found planets with never-ending storms and planets completely covered in water, which, by the way, the game also features a massive amount of underwater gameplay. You can even make your own underwater base. Now, I think one of the coolest parts of the game to me is the anomaly. This is essentially a player hub. You'll be directed here as part of the main quest, and here you can find a ridiculous amount of research, which can be directed towards all your systems, your starship, multi-tool, base building, freighter ship, you name it, and you can research more parts and customize these systems to your liking. Furthermore, in the anomaly, you can also team up with other players to take on missions or visit each other's bases, totally adding a multiplayer element to a game that can often feel a little lonely as you travel throughout the universe. But in my opinion, the best part about the anomaly is how you access it. Basically, when you're out free-flying in space, at any given time, you can summon the anomaly to you, and it shows up and you can enter it. This is such a cool and imaginative way to import a player hub into your game. It's not just some static location or some teleports, it's an actual object that travels to you. I just thought it was kind of genius. And actually, after leaving the anomaly for the first time, I found myself caught up in a space battle. Some pirate ships began to attack me, and you can lock onto enemies by using the S key. They have shields that you have to take down before you can damage their actual ships. Currently, my Starship just had the stock weapons attached, but I still made quick work of them, and later on you can upgrade these weapons pretty extensively. A while after that, I made myself a second base beside this holocom structure, because I thought it'd be nice to have some other structures nearby. I made myself a second teleporter and got that online, meaning I could finally travel between my two bases, which was definitely nice. As you get this teleporter system more and more connected, the universe starts to feel a little bit more accessible. And I just continued following the story quests, which are actually pretty in-depth. They're often voice acted and well written, and I was genuinely growing more and more curious about this universe. When I first heard about No Man's Sky, I definitely didn't expect such a robust questing system that constantly has you traveling around, exploring new areas, and finding new resources, but I was pleasantly surprised. While following these quests, I finally got to participate in my first bit of actual combat. My multi-tool now had a bolt caster attachment, which allowed me to shoot enemies. You'll find as you travel around that some planets are completely peaceful and others not so much. I didn't find myself participating in combat too often in No Man's Sky, but every time I did, it was a challenging and fun experience. And eventually, while exploring some faraway star systems, I found myself caught up in another fight in my ship with a bunch of pirates. Once again, I took them out, however this time I received a message. Apparently these pirates were trying to attack a freighter ship, and the captain welcomed me on board. So I flew over to this giant ship and I parked my ship inside this ship, and upon talking with the captain, he asked me if I wanted to be the new captain of this freighter ship. I obviously said yes, and this is just so cool. Basically, you get access to this giant ship where you can park one or multiple of your own ships, and here you can also make yet another base. So you can have a base on a ship that's in space. On your freighter ship, you can also recruit and purchase other ships and crew who you can send out on missions that can passively grant you resources or money. I don't know how, but every time I think I'm starting to figure out No Man's Sky, some new cool system pops up and it blows my mind every time. The freighter ship system is probably my favorite thing I've come across so far. There's another feature in No Man's Sky known as settlements, where you'll rescue a group of people on a planet who are facing some sort of problem, and after rescuing them, you can take control of the settlement. Unfortunately, the first one of these I found was on such a vile planet that I decided to just leave. The place was completely radioactive with almost permanent storms, and it seems like if I wanted a settlement, it needed to be somewhere at least a little bit more inhabitable. With all that being said, this is hands down the coolest, most imaginative, largest, most in-depth survival game I've ever played. No Man's Sky is completely in its own league. I didn't even know when would be an appropriate amount of playtime for me to offer my first impressions, as it feels like even with 1,000 hours that still wouldn't be enough, just due to the sheer size of this game and everything that you can do. If you've ever wanted that fully immersive space travel game that allows for genuine otherworldly experiences, I mean, it's only No Man's Sky. No other game is doing this or even coming close. Hello Games offers constant free updates. Even just a few days ago, we saw the Voyagers update, which added a new class of starship that allows you to bring your friends onto your actual ship, and much, much more. So is No Man's Sky worth playing in 2025? Safe to say yes, absolutely. I'm literally worried that after playing No Man's Sky, I'm not going to be able to return to my normally scheduled MMO broadcasting. I'm so ridiculously addicted and I can't wait to play more. So there's literally never been a better time to start playing No Man's Sky, and it's available on PC, PlayStation, Xbox, and even Switch. Once again, a massive thank you to Hello Games for not only introducing me to this amazing universe, but also sponsoring today's video. If you guys enjoyed the video, don't forget a like, a comment, a sub, those things help a bunch. And if you really enjoy the videos, consider becoming a channel member. Anyways, I will catch you all in the next one. Later.